Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the future of the water and wastewater industry and the careers you didn't know about. I'm your host, Dave Kosminski, and we are live on location at the CWWA CTAWWA Joint Conference in Saratoga Springs, New York. And with me is an old friend. Okay, well, he wore many hats through his career. Mr. Ray Jarema, who is now the water control manager at the Berlin Water Department. Hi, Ray.
Correct.
Good. Why don't you just kind of move up there just a little bit? So
Nice seeing you again, Dave.
hey, it's when you get our age, it's good to be seen.
Every time.
Every time. So, Ray, tell us a little bit about your day job.
I'm the manager for Berlin Water Control now for almost 11 years.
Yeah.
I retired from the State Health Department drinking water program after 40 years, and basically now I work with water and sewer,
Okay.
which is a little bit of an interesting situation because most of my life career has been dedicated to water.
Absolutely.
Personally. And so I did sewer back when I was in college. I was the monitor for the UConn campus.
Oh, okay.
I did the sample collection and the testing for the data for DEP compliance at the time. I didn't realize I was going to get into the water industry, but most of my classmates went into DEP, and I decided to go to the Department of Public Health, and it was probably the best decision I made in my life.
Yes, you were there a long time.
Yeah, it was. And I had a lot of good mentorship. Dick Woodhall, I don't know if you remember going back.
I do.
Was an individual I really expected and respected, actually.
Sure.
And he was nationally respected,
Yeah.
which was the nice thing because when EPA was first being created back in 1969, EPA came to Connecticut because of him and because of his staunch requirements in terms of looking at filtration plants, and also additionally he was a proponent of not only that but of a lot of other issues like
Sure.
color and turbidity, dealing with that before the TTHM issue became an issue.
Right.
Recognizing that that was still a problematic area, so he worked with that. And then we were lucky because EPA found us very interesting because Connecticut, and most people don't realize this, has the oldest tumor registry in the entire country.
Really?
So EPA was very interested. We did some asbestos studies and some other studies there because they could tap into the epidemiology and they could tap into the water quality data.
Okay.
So that was one of the things that kind of motivated them to. And I got to see a lot of people from EPA at the higher level, so it was always nice for me personally as
Sure.
well. So.
Yeah. Now, I think Jane Downey is still there at EPA.
Jane, I believe, is retired last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the date of it was, but yes, she's gone on. I'm kind of lost. Mark Siri is one of the gentlemen I work with consistently over the years.
Yeah.
And but over the years, I've worked with a lot of folks over there. Floyd Taylor, Chuck Larson, and Jerry Healy.
Oh my gosh!
You remember all those names?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Flipping back through the calendar.
Yes, and they have awards named after those individuals because they were so prominent, and most of them are USPHS officers too.
Yeah.
So, which is not unheard from now anymore.
For sure. Now, how, now you're on the other side of the fence from the regulatory side.
The regulatory section, it was interesting because now you're absolutely right. I look at a lot of the things that I've drafted and worked on before. Some of them don't make much sense in some ways. You look at it from a different perspective, and obviously I probably have some regrets in some of the areas, but the thing is you wrote regulations based on what you thought was best
Sure.
at the time. And so those things have been changed over the years as well. So, yeah, it's a little interesting. The public notification process I see is sometimes not very helpful.
Correct, yeah.
And the public in general a lot of times doesn't get it and doesn't respect it, just like we heard from the, the national director from AWWA. You can get the message out there, but a lot of times the people don't really understand what they're getting. And relatively speaking, our system, we basically have a well field, and we produce water, and we also purchase water from New Britain and Cromwell Fire District.
Mm-hmm.
So,
now, are those considered interconnections?
Yes, they are, and we also have an interconnection with the MDC.
Okay.
And I'm looking at an interconnection just recently. We were talking with the city of Meriden to connect with Meriden, so we can do some work at our lamentation tank. Our lamentation tank has some corrosion issues. Has never been done. what I'm doing in general from water and sewer. I try to knock off a project every year.
Okay.
We just finished a $3.2 million pumping station, sewer pumping station with MDC as a partnership with them. And we don't have we don't have a sewer treatment plant. We discharge into the Mattabesset district.
Okay.
So we do it that way.
Right.
And we have 10 total pump stations, sewer
Right.
pumping stations. So.
Now, what's your average daily water demand?
About 1.3, 1.2, something, a million gallons per day.
And what's the population?
Population for us is about 6,000, but we also serve completely Worthington Fire District. We have 2 districts in town, Worthington and Kensington Fire Districts that were originally. Now, the Berlin Water Control was created, and I didn't even realize this, as a health department employee who did inspections, that there was a 3rd district, East Berlin Fire District, which became defunct in about 1965, 66, and that's how the town Berlin Water Control was created, to fill that void. So they took over the East Berlin system, and so additionally they modified a whole bunch of projects into this water and sewer because the existing system wasn't built properly. So they set up a grid program for water and sewer so to help. So the other 2 districts really rely on us in some respect to do the sewer removal and to provide also with water and fire protection.
Yeah, and it's amazing how your perspective changes when you kind of look at it through a different lens. You know,
Definitely.
From the regulatory lens, now you're on the other side. And
the reality is, if you had it to do over again, it would be worthwhile to have a utility operator then become a regulator because they recognize what limitations there are and what things are realistic and what things are not.
Well, a lot of times you get the situation, the old saying, you know, you don't know how the sausage is made.
Correct. Yeah, that's true.
You know, you know, if you're on a utility side, the regulators sometimes, you know, I don't want to say they shoot from the hip, but you know.
Well, with my career at the health department, let me tell you, it's the best thing going.
Yeah.
I fell in love with the job right off the bat. And I gave it all. Basically, I used to come in. We used to have to come in at 8:30. I was there at 6.
Yeah.
And basically, I just loved the job, and I always stayed late and always worked on it. So it was just one of those things. All my friends who went over to DEP became DEP directors, which was nice. But on the other hand, from my perspective, I learned a lot from Dick Wadhall. I learned a lot from Dave Wiggins, who was at the director at the time, and Ted Williford's. These are the first WWs.
Okay.
Williford, Wiggin, and Woodhall. So basically, water, sewer, and the whole environmental health program. So
now, where did Jerry Iwan fit into that?
Jerry Iwan was hired in the early '80s, mid '80s, I want to say. At the time, if you recall, back in '82, we had a drought. We had a severe drought.
Yes.
We only had Greenwich had 30 days of water supply left. And so we went to the state and basically said, we need to do something about this. So we came up with the Water Supply Task Force in 1984 and 85. I was the health department's representative to that task force. And they decided at the time, which was a big decision, to create a planning program, which I at the time I was the section chief. And I told them at that time I didn't feel comfortable continuing on with the additional responsibility. So I became chief engineer. So the engineering portion I stepped aside, and they hired Jerry Iwan for the program manager, which worked out really well because he was number 1, I was number 2.
Wow.
And so I got to implement all the programs, and he'd go out there and do all the work with the political stuff and whatever, and the part that I didn't really care for.
Right.
And so it worked out. Our partnership worked out for quite a while before it fell apart. But anyway.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, it's ironic, you know. I think this is my 108th episode. Okay. And my very when I launched this podcast, and again, the whole premise of the podcast is to try to, introduce succession planning in the water industry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so with high schools, you know me for many years.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
And develop that relationship with the high schools, and make kids, high school seniors, college aware of the awesome careers.
Well,
that
you
I-
were extremely helpful to the health department with, what was it, Wally or Walter?
Walter the Water Saver. Oh yes.
For cross connections and for the whole thing. Yeah, so you've always been a proponent of education
Oh,
in
yeah.
that perspective, and I think it was extremely helpful to the health department because at the time we were having a lot of new staff too.
Sure.
And this is the good way to bring them in and let them know.
Well,
Nowadays, that mentoring unfortunately has been limited, and
Yeah.
it's been problematic, and it's
Yeah.
obvious in the programs themselves.
So, but my going back to my initial thought, my first podcast was with Lori Matthew. Okay.
Oh.
And who was but the hierarchy has
I
changed.
hired Laurie Matthew at the time, so.
Since she's been so long since
Yeah.
retired and
Yes.
so forth. But and she was good people. The thing is that going through and 95% of the people that I've had on the podcast, okay, got into the water industry by happenstance. It's like
Well, that's exactly right, and I didn't realize it until my senior year in college at UConn, and my good friend Al Wengo at the time, Al and I were working on a master's. He decided not to finish his. I went on and finished mine, and then started a PhD program. Basically had finished all my coursework,
Yeah.
but didn't want to go into. I couldn't see myself actually going on for another couple of years with stipends and basically trying to do some additional research.
Correct.
We were getting married at the same time. Actually, I got married on a Saturday and graduated with a master's on Sunday.
Ah.
So and so that was kind of. And basically, I didn't want to go into an area where it was going to be a little bit of a problem. So I needed to make money, and basically started working with the health department. As
Sure.
a job came up, Lenny Assard was one of the ones who
Yes.
got me there.
Yeah.
Don Smith was another one there,
Yeah.
and then within a couple months, they'd all gone, and it was just me and Dick Woodhall for the longest time. For almost 2 years, by the way. So, and that's why, for me, it was very great because I got to be mentored by an individual I
Sure.
respected very highly, and that was extremely helpful. That doesn't happen anymore, per se.
Oh my God! Now, was it Don Smith that came from regional? Oh, who came?
No, Don Smith.
Who became?
No, Don Smith went to Raoul Hastad
Oh, okay.
for work there, and Lenny Assard went to Waterbury and then became general manager over at Connecticut American or one of those companies before they were bought over by Aquarian or Bridgeport Hydraulic.
So who came from regional that took the?
Regional.
Did he succeed Jerry?
No. Let's see. Oh yes, you're right. Yeah, the other Smith. Let me think of. You're right. Daryl Smith.
Daryl, there we go.
Daryl Smith
Okay.
was actually. Yes, you're right. I forgot about that. He'd actually been in the laboratory,
Yeah,
and he took over for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when he left, I believe Laurie got the job.
Yeah, yeah.
And then so that changed dramatically. So.
Yeah, and then they changed the hierarchy.
Yeah,
so I think
yeah, quite a
Laura
bit, yeah.
became a branch chief. Is that what? It is?
Yes, she moved on to a branch chief
Yeah,
level. Yeah.
go from there. So anyway, so when you were going through school, were you? Was your education path going
Well, my
forward?
education path was I started as a civil engineer. Civil engineering was I thought that my area where I was going to settle in on. But when I started doing water and sewer, Dr. Helfgott, for instance, who was my counselor at the time, I did studies for him.
Yeah, yeah.
My master's was on long-term BOD and COD, how to compare the two things. So I started. I was like master of the laboratory.
There we go.
I worked for five professors, and basically the laboratory was mine. I was able to study, to keep it clean and keep it working.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just fell in love with the job.
Wow,
So
wow.
water and sewer, and sewer primarily initially. I did a study for the city of New Milford with the agricultural department from UConn. One of the professors there was doing work, and basically thereafter, when I went to the health department, it was strictly drinking water, and from then on, it was just the greatest thing going. Safe Drinking Water Act, I have to tell you that. I felt it was kind of funny, but when Dick was on vacation, Dick Woodhall, we actually submitted the application to become the primacy agency, and we missed it by 1 day.
Really?
We wanted to be a primacy, the first state in the union to have primacy.
Yeah.
Oklahoma beat us by 1 day. the purpose for that was that the EPA administrator was from Connecticut.
Okay.
So we wanted to try to show off basically and show that we're right on target, and basically we're the entity that had the primacy.
Okay.
So we took on primacy, and when basically from there on in, Safe Drinking Water Act was amended and then added on to in 1976. There were no regulations before that. The United States Public Health Drinking Water Standards were the only recommendations back in 1962, so none of those really applied. And then, as you know personally, the number of systems that we ended up monitoring, a community, and non-community, and non-transient, it just exploded. So, I mean, it was a large number for a small state.
So now, who's left in the health department? Now, Bill is still ahead of certification, correct?
Bill Sullivan,
Bill Sullivan,
he used to work for me directly as well. Him and Tom Chira and Mandy Smith.
Mandy's still there.
Yeah, Mandy is still Smith. Those are the folks. Vicky Carrier still there as well, and then Cindy Seck goes back way back, and there's a few others too.
Well, who was oh God, he used to do a lot of the cross connections.
Well, Bob Rivard.
Bob Rivard, there we go.
Yeah, Bob's.
Is Bob retired?
Yeah, Bob's retired, and then unfortunately his wife just passed away
a
year ago. So yeah, it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
They were a nice couple, and so Bob actually, I hired him. I remember it was a federal program, and then basically what we did is he hired him for operator certification and cross connections, and he was really instrumental in doing all of that. So at the same time.
Well, when I started the Water and People class at Portland High School, obviously Bill Sullivan was instrumental in laying out. We had the curriculum approved by the state health department. We worked with Wes Winterbottom from Gateway,
right.
And so forth. And I also worked with Jane Downing from EPA and so forth. She was on board, but it was huge. I mean, we were the first high school class in the country that was able to.
Yeah, to your credit, obviously.
Well, it was a team effort.
Well, yeah.
It was a team effort.
But it was your motivation that did it all, so that was important. So.
Well, and I think, in the 5 years that I taught the class there before I retired and so forth, we actually certified 68 high school seniors, as small water systems operators.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So.
So Dick Woodhull and I used to do it verbally. we'd go from utility to utility, and basically banging the drum, and asking them questions and seeing what they could do on site, and that's how we approved the operators in those days.
Yeah.
So before the regulations were written up, and before we had a formality in that whole process.
Yeah.
So that's the way it was handled.
Yeah, no, and Wes Winterbottom and I have been working together for many years. I mean, we've been doing the water boot camps at MDC, and so forth. And now we're working on an internship program with Eastern Connecticut with Carol Stewart, who's the director of curriculum at Eastern Connecticut State.
Yeah, Wes and I go back when he was at DEP.
Yes,
for many
that's
years,
right. He was a state, for many years. So.
Yeah.
Good people. So anyway, as you know, I have an alter ego. I have I have a music side of my thing.
Yes.
So tell me, do you remember the first concert you ever went to?
I can't even tell you. No, I don't know. Honest to God, that's not. My wife and I basically have gone to a couple of concerts, but not recently. I can't recall the first one.
Okay. What kind of music are you into?
Contemporary, everything, and then
nice.
of course a little bit of what do you call it? Not classical, but semi-classical, I guess. For instance, like some of the what do you call it? Theater shows.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah, Broadway and all that.
Yeah, Broadway ones.
Nice. What do you do for hobbies?
I garden a lot.
All right, you got the green thumb.
Yeah, what's funny, because here's what happened to me when I first retired with the state in 2012. I had 4 gardens, and I was giving food away to everybody in my street. And then I said I needed something more. And then this job was being offered as a part-time job. I said, I got to apply for it. I got to take it.
Okay.
And it was the best decision I made, because the thing is now, what I did is start out slow, and then basically I'm doing a part-time job, but actually it's a full-time position. It should be, because of the amount of work that's involved.
Sure, absolutely.
But I'm carving out an infrastructure requirement, and you're very familiar with it, I know. Infrastructure is a big issue.
Oh, my God.
And I'm just ticking away little by little at what needs to be done.
You mean aging
Yeah,
infrastructure?
aging. I've replaced mains. I've replaced pumping stations. One of our first pumping stations we had a connection, as I said, with MDC. So I asked my foreman to go over there, and I says, tell me how it works. And I says, well, turn it on. And he says, well, it's kind of flooded. I said, well, see where it goes. And then so he goes in and finds out that basically it's non-functioning. It was designed for 75 PSI. We're operating at 130 plus. It doesn't work. So one of my first projects to replace the pumping station, because it's a diversion permit, and you can appreciate diversion permits from MDC.
Oh, absolutely.
And so 500,000 gallons, they definitely needed that connection. So.
All right.
So, and one thing led to another, and
Yeah.
then that led to the fact that they had a sewer pumping station, which I didn't know anything about, and that was my next project, and it just led on to other things that, as I discovered in the files and plans, that needed to be upgraded, and I got a whole list of things I still like to do. So
Checking them off one by one.
if God gives me health, I'll try to do as many as I can. So.
Well, there you go. And right now you're working. My old boss, Ryan Curley, is now the town manager.
Enjoy working with him, and he's been pretty good to us, so I can't complain.
He speaks highly of you.
Oh, that's right. That's good to know. I didn't know that.
He
So.
speaks highly of you. He says, do you know Ray?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I know Ray?
Yeah.
I go from way back,
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, a lot of water under the bridge.
Yes, that's true. And both of us, I remember you used to take photography, all the pictures for all the events. So I give you a lot of credit for that. That was great.
Everybody used to say, says, how come you're not in the pictures? Because I'm behind.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that ironic? It should have been some selfies for yourself at the time. If they had it at the time. So.
Exactly. So, okay, I have a desert island. What if you got stuck on a desert island? Okay, what food could you eat every day?
I don't know. Pineapples, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Whatever.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. Nobody's ever asked me.
Yeah. Well, they have these off the wall. Pizza's high, tacos are high on the list and all that kind of stuff.
I don't know about pizza. I think I get tired of it a little while after.
Yeah.
a while,
For sure. So anyway, Ray, thank you so much for taking time.
Oh yeah, thank you. I had the opportunity to talk to you about this. Yeah. That's
all
great.
right. Fantastic. All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Let me push the button here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this episode of the Future of the Water Wastewater Industry with and the careers you didn't know about. And with us in the house from the Berlin Water Department, is the Mr. Ray Jarema, who is the manager and control over there. And Ray, thank you so much. And that is all.